Isn't the purpose of life happiness? What is the purpose of life? Is it something else? No. The purpose of life is happiness. But unfortunately, we are caught in this pleasure pain game. We are trying to attain pleasure and we are running away from pain. But we are miserable again and again. We think success is happiness. We are trying to climb this peak called achievement. Achievement is the first peak of happiness. And the purpose of life is not to climb this peak. Because people who are climbing this peak of achievement, this peak of happiness, they are going from peak to peak to peak. They are going from success to success to success. I was on this journey for 25 years. I achieved success, more success, more success, and more success. Was I achieving more happiness and more happiness and more happiness? No. More success does not equal to more happiness. We have been taught the equation wrong. We have been taught the equation success is happiness. The right equation is happiness is success. If you are trying to achieve success and that success makes you unhappy, would you like to achieve such a success? Of course not. Whether you're trying to achieve success in business, in politics, in art, in sports, whatever be the subject, any successful person is achieving success because they want to be happy. And success does give happiness. But this happiness is called pleasure. It gives you pleasure only for a moment. It's gone. Unfortunately, we don't realize it. We are trying to be an ace. We are trying to win the race. And so we are in this chase and we get caught in the maze. We don't realize that true happiness comes when we live with grace. We don't realize the truth. We don't realize happiness has three peaks. Happiness everybody seeks. The purpose of life is happiness, and there's no doubt about that. Every human being wants to be happy. But what is the way to true happiness? What is the way to that ultimate peak of happiness? It is not pleasure that comes from success. Of course, success will give you name, fame, money, and it's good. But money can buy a bed, it can't buy sleep. Money can buy a ring, it can't buy love. Money can buy medicines, it can't buy health. You may have a lot of material wealth, but what if your spiritual health is bad? Therefore, you have to evolve on this journey of happiness. The journey of happiness is the journey of life. But people are caught in this merry-go-round that goes round and round. There's pleasure, there's pain, there's loss, there's gain, there's sun, there's rain, and we go round again and again and again and again. What is true happiness? The first peak is achievement. Everybody who's not rich, who's not successful, everybody in this world wants that peak because they believe in the lie that success is happiness. Right from the time we are kids, we are in school, what are we taught? Oh, come first in class. Oh, you must be the school captain. Oh, you must be in the school sports team, cricket team, football team, hockey team. We are taught that winning is not the main thing. It is the only thing. Why? Why? Why are we not taught that we bring nothing, we take nothing? Why are we not taught that far more important than achievement is to live with contentment and fulfillment? Why are we not taught that more than pleasure, happiness comes from peace? The second peak of happiness is fulfillment. People on this peak of happiness are far more happier than people on the peak of achievement. Remember, all successful people are not happy. That's why they commit suicide. But all happy people are successful because they have already achieved the objective of success. They are already happy. They don't need success. They don't let their need become their greed. They live a life of contentment, of fulfillment. Of course, they achieve some amount of success, money, but then they stop. Instead of making money, they want to make a difference. They live, they love, they laugh, they build a universal connection. They are living with freedom. They are living with a positive attitude. They are emotionally enthusiastic. They are not slaves of the mind. And this is a second peak of fulfillment. So those who take an exit from that highway that is leading to the peak of achievement, they've already won a battle. They have got over that obsession of success and achievement, which does not give happiness. My dear friends, look at the successful people in the world. First, there is stress and anxiety to become successful. Then the stress and anxiety increases because they have to retain that success. One day, every champion has to come down and they can't digest it. When there are desires and our desires are not achieved, we become disappointed. We become unhappy. Remember, happiness and unhappiness have a connection. So if you are on the second peak of fulfillment, but you are so unhappy, suppose you are experiencing pain of the body, misery of the mind, agony of the ego. This triple suffering can kill you, whether you are on the first peak of achievement or the second peak of fulfillment. The first peak is actually not a peak, it's a plateau. The first peak is actually not a peak, it's a cliff. One day when you reach that cliff, you will drop down and you will die. That cliff is called death. So the first peak of achievement is not a peak, it's a cliff. Everybody has to die. You may be the richest man in the world, but one day you will drop from that cliff called achievement. But if you are on the second peak of fulfillment, it's not a peak, it's a plateau. So remember, the first peak of achievement is a cliff, and the second peak of fulfillment is a plateau. Why plateau? Because you're not climbing up. You're living a life of fully content and satisfied. You're living a life that is full of contentment and satisfaction. But then, both on the peak of achievement and the peak of fulfillment, both suffer pain of the body, misery of the mind, agony of the ego. Who doesn't experience physical pain? We have pain. There's so many aches and pains as we grow. We can get rid of pain through painkillers. Today there are opioids and even serious pains like cancer we can deal with. If you're having a root canal, you can take an anesthesia. But what about pain of the mind? What about fear, worry, stress, anxiety, depression? These can become so aggressive that they can create a depression. The aggression of thought can lead to a depression that can take you to suicide. The suffering of the mind and the agony of the ego. The ego creates so much agony, anger, hate, revenge, jealousy. This creates so much anguish. How does one overcome the misery of the mind and ego that says it is me, M-E? You have to evolve, not from the first peak of achievement to the second peak of fulfillment, but to the third peak of happiness. The ultimate peak of happiness is called enlightenment. The third and ultimate peak of happiness is a state where you are not achieving pleasure from achievement. You have crossed that state of peace that comes from fulfillment, and you have attained purpose that comes with enlightenment. Enlightenment is that state where you have attained the true purpose of life. You come to realize, who am I and why am I here? You reach that state where you have achieved the ultimate purpose of life. Then you are liberated from pain of the body, misery of the mind, agony of the ego. Does it mean the body will not have pain? Of course the body will have pain. But you have the realization that I am not this body that suffers pain. You kill the pain before the pain kills you. Then the misery of the mind. You transcend the mind. You kill the mind. You still the mind. You become a master of the mind. Those who don't, they let their mind become a monkey. They let their mind become a monkey, and the monkey makes them a donkey. When the monkey mind is in charge, it starts riding our life horse. Our challenge is to become the boss, not let the monkey mind ride our horse. When you transcend the mind and you transcend the ego, the ME, the mind and ego, you are liberated from the triple suffering of the body, mind, and ego. Then you have reached the third peak of happiness called enlightenment. The purpose of life is to get here. The purpose of life is not to be caught in that race of achievement and success. The purpose of life is not to drift in the plateau of fulfillment, because you will still suffer. Not just suffer all the misery on earth, you will return to earth in a rebirth. But the moment you reach the third peak of enlightenment, the moment you are enlightened, you realize the truth. I am not the body that suffers. I am not the mind. It doesn't exist. Where is the mind? I cannot find. I am not the ego. It's a false identity that says I, me, my, mine. We realize we are the divine soul. SOUL, spark of unique life. We realize we are not born on our birthday. That day is fake. Don't cut a cake. Awake. We were born 9 months before, when one cell called zygote came alive. Where was the body? There was no body. The body comes later. When we realize we are that spark of unique life, that soul, we are free from the triple suffering of the body, mind, and ego. Because you will realize that there is no mind. It's just a bundle of thoughts. And when you are still, when you still the mind, you kill the mind, you reach a state of thoughtlessness known as consciousness. In that state of consciousness, the intellect shines. In that state of consciousness, you realize the truth and experience ananda, nirvana, a euphoria of joy, an ecstasy of bliss. Therefore, you have to reach that state. I am not the body, I am not the mind, I am not the ego. The ego is a false identity. On the third peak of happiness, enlightenment, you are enlightened. You overcome the ignorance of who you are not, and you realize who you are. You are the divine soul. You are liberated and you are united with the divine. On this journey of enlightenment, you realize that you, the soul, are a speck of Sip, the supreme immortal power. You realize that every living creature is nothing but a soul. We don't have a soul, we are the soul. You realize that we are all different souls as long as we are living in this body, but in reality, all souls come from Sip, the supreme immortal power. We come from Sip, we go back to Sip. It is just like a wave comes from the ocean and goes back to the ocean. We are all effects. The cause is Sip. When we realize this truth that we are Sip, then we see the divine in every lip. We start a new trip on a very beautiful ship, a ship of love, because we are able to love one and all, knowing that the divine manifests in all. You want to be happy? The way to happiness is not pleasure. Pleasure is an ordinary happiness. It's momentary happiness. It comes and goes. The way to happiness is peace. The foundation of happiness is peace. There's bliss, there's joy. The fountain of joy is love, where you can love one and all, not as the skin, but as the divine that lives within. And all this comes when you climb the third and ultimate peak of enlightenment, when you overcome ignorance, when you realize the truth. I am not I. I am not this. I am that. I am a manifestation of the divine. I am a soul. This is the purpose of life. The purpose of life is not pleasure that comes from success and achievement. The purpose of life is true bliss, true happiness that comes from discovering the purpose of life. Therefore, the purpose of life is not happiness. The purpose of life is to discover the purpose of life. Because when you discover the purpose of life, happiness flows to you. You don't have to run behind happiness, which is like a shadow. The more you run behind it, the further it goes away. You don't have to try to become happy, because you learn how to be happy. Happiness doesn't come with becoming happy. You learn to live life moment by moment, not in a past that is gone, not in a future not yet born. Happiness is in the moment. Happiness is not from the mind. Happiness is in consciousness. Happiness comes from divine love. Yes, everybody wants to be happy, but not everybody knows the art of happiness. Not everybody knows the secret of the third and ultimate peak of enlightenment. When we reach that third and ultimate peak of enlightenment, our life is full of happiness, eternal happiness, divine love, everlasting peace, liberated from pain of the body, misery of the mind, agony of the ego. When we live a life when we live a life of being enlightened, then we are free from all the misery on this earth, and we are free from rebirth. An enlightened soul is liberated in that moment of death, and he becomes united with the divine. Enlightenment eliminates all fear. There's no fear of death. There's no fear of any loss. There's no worry, stress, anxiety. Because an enlightened person knows that this world is just a show. We are actors who come and go. Nothing is ours. We come empty-handed, we will leave empty-handed. Nobody can win by even taking a pin when they depart. Isn't this the truth? Why don't we realize the true meaning of happiness? Why don't we realize that the purpose of life is happiness, not achievement and success? When will we realize and start climbing that ultimate peak of enlightenment, which is the life of eternal happiness?